Hey everyone, my name's Jessie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my second mini wrap-up for the month of June, where I talk about the most recent 4 or 5 books that I've read in the month and give little mini reviews on each. I do this so that my end of the month wrap-up doesn't take forever to film, and so that you guys get a little bit more detailed thoughts than I would give in a big monthly wrap-up. So without further ado, let's just get right into these books. The first book I read since last wrap-up was Artemis by Andy Weir. I still don't know how to say that. I really should look it up. I really enjoyed this. I was so pleasantly surprised because I read The Martian by Andy Weir, and that is one of my top 10 favorite books of all time. If you haven't read The Martian, please go read it. So I really wanted to pick up his other work, and I saw that this one wasn't as well reviewed on Goodreads, but I still really wanted to read it because I loved The Martian and his writing style so much, and I was so pleasantly surprised because I had really low expectations going into this just because of the reviews that I've seen, and I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, so I still love The Martian more, but this one was so much fun. It follows our main character, Jazz, who lives on this city called Artemis on the moon, and essentially she's working as kind of like a thief and someone who smuggles in illegal products to the moon city for money. So she's not the best character starting out, but she gets hired by this pretty bad guy to kind of do this very risky thing to help that guy get power on this moon city, and it ends up going wrong, and you kind of follow the story from there. I loved this. I loved how unique it felt. It was so different from anything else I've read, and you still get a lot of Andy Weir's I'm just gonna call him Andy. You still get a lot of Andy's awesome character development and writing that you got in The Martian. One of the things I loved about The Martian so much was getting to really see Mark Watney's problem solving and how he applied all of his scientific knowledge to the problem at hand and going through that thought process with him. And you get the same sort of thing here, where Jazz is very much throughout this whole book having to figure out these very complex problems, and her problem solving process is so much fun to follow. So I just loved following such a genius character, and it's the same kind of snarky type sass that you got with Mark Watney, but you get that now in Jazz. And I would say that Mark Watney's a little bit more likable, but I still loved Jazz as a character. She was very sarcastic, very snarky, didn't take shit from anybody. I loved her for that. So I highly recommend this one. If you loved The Martian, you should definitely still give this a try, even if it doesn't have as good of ratings, because it's still so much fun. The next book I buddy read with Charles over at Books on Stereo. I'm gonna link his channel down below because I love it, and it was so much fun buddy reading this book with him, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I'm not gonna lie, it would have taken me forever to have gotten to this book just because romance hasn't been a genre that I've been reaching to recently, but when Charles asked me to buddy read this with him, I could not pass it up because I've heard amazing things about this book, and I'm so glad I read it, especially in the summertime. I mean, it's called Beach Read for a reason, you guys. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. If you don't know what it's about these 2 people who are living in these neighboring beach houses in Michigan during the summer, and both of them are authors, but in different genres. Our main girl character is a romance author, and the main male character is a literary fiction author. So when they both are experiencing writer blocks, they decide to swap genres to try and sell a new book, and from there maybe a romance blossoms. I loved it. I loved the 2 main characters that we were following. I loved their slow burn, hate to friends to love romance. I thought it was so much fun seeing their progression, and it felt very earned. It wasn't a romance that developed too quickly or you just didn't feel the chemistry. I totally felt it the whole time with these 2 characters. I loved their witty banter, and I liked that this explored some serious topics as well, which a lot of times you don't get in romance, so that really made it stand out to me. Overall, this is an awesome summertime read. I can't recommend it enough, and if you haven't checked out Charles's channel, please check it out because he also really enjoyed this. We were both raving about it to each other throughout this whole read, so it was so much fun buddy reading it. So I can't recommend it enough. Please pick up Beach Read. Next book I read was The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I really enjoyed Final Girls by Riley Sager, so I was excited to pick up his second book, and this one follows a girl who, as a teenager, went to a summer camp for these wealthy kids and got into this cliquey group with these other girls, and while she was at summer camp, the girls disappeared and they were never found. So now fast forward years later, the woman is grown up and she's going back to that summer camp again to try to find out what happened to those friends that she had made that one summer. And I loved the atmosphere in this one. It's very reminiscent of Final Girls. You can definitely see Riley Sager has a very distinct writing style. His character work is really good. I did enjoy all of the characters, even though they were extremely flawed. I really liked seeing how secrets slowly came out, and there were a couple twists and turns throughout this whole book that really kept you invested in it. I will say it was pretty slow paced. It took a while to get going, but once we got going, it was very good. I love the summer camp setting. I thought this was so much fun to read, especially in the summertime, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I will say throughout reading this whole book, I was floundering between 3.5 stars, and I landed on 3.5 stars because I thought, it was a very slow build up and it did take a while to finally get to the fun stuff. But the epilogue in this one, or I guess, I don't know if it's called an epilogue, but the final chapter in this one bumped it up to a 4-star because I was shook. It was so good. I loved that final twist. So I would highly recommend this one if you enjoyed Final Girls by Riley Sager. I think you will definitely enjoy the writing style and the atmosphere and the characters in this one as well. The next book I read was Gray's Sister by Mark Lawrence, the sequel to Red Sister, and I enjoyed Red Sister. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a very strong start with a lot of potential, but a lot of it was confusing to me. Some of the character work was really well done, while some of the other characters I couldn't tell one from the other. And then the actual magic system was very confusing to me. But I will say, this one was so much better. Wow, I was shocked. You kind of get some closure that you needed from the finale of the first book, and then it jumps forward in time, which I thought was really appropriate. I think that sometimes it can feel a little gimmicky to have these big time jumps, but I think Mark Lawrence did it really well, where we passed by a lot of the stuff that just wouldn't have been interesting. So I think he had an appropriate time jump and it was done well. And I'm gonna say that even though the first half of this book I think reads a little bit slower, I would say the first half of this book is a 4-star book to me. The last half, when you get to the final 200 pages, it read like a 5-star book to me. I could not put this book down. Every time I put it down, I would be thinking about it. I would be worried for our characters. I got so invested in all of the characters, so I just had to keep reading it. It was so good, you guys. So I ended up giving this 4.5 stars because of the first half being 4, the second half being 5, and I'm still thinking about it now. I'm like, maybe I should give this 5 if I'm still hooked on it, and I can't wait to pick up Holy Sister now. I think what really sold this book versus Red Sister for me is we get a couple different perspectives in Grey Sister, and while I love Nona as a character, she is an amazing character. I think it was really nice to round out the story with a couple other perspectives. Most notably, Abbess Glass is such an awesome character. I loved Glass in this book. Oh my gosh, so good. So I am now a Book of the Ancestor fan. I can't wait to get to Holy Sister. I need it. After that finale, I need Holy Sister. I can't wait for it. So highly recommend, even if you're iffy on Red Sister after reading that first book, give Grey Sister a shot and see what you think, because I promise you it just gets so much better. And all those confusing parts of the magic system and the confusing names of the characters and such, trying to keep track of it all starts to click and make sense, and it just becomes much easier to read. So I'm I'm hooked. I love it. The final book I have to talk about in this video is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrick Backman. This is my fourth Fredrick Backman book that I've read, and I think so far it's my least favorite, but I'm gonna give a disclaimer here and say that I think that the reason I didn't enjoy this book as much as I enjoyed his other ones is entirely my fault, because one, I don't think I was in the right mood for this kind of book, and two, I was listening to it on audio, and several times through pretty big chunks of this book, my mind just wandered. It like couldn't keep my attention. So I don't think listening to the audiobook was the route to go for this one, and I think that it takes a certain mood to want to have this like very character-driven story, because really there's not a huge plot in this. I would say that the plot revolves around this girl named Elsa, who is 7 years old and loses her grandmother, and as a part of like her grandmother's will, Elsa receives letters from her grandmother that she has to pass along to her grandmother's like oldest friends, and she finds out more about the world and about herself and about her parents and about her grandmother through delivering these letters, and it's very, very character focused. So again, I think Fredrick Backman's writing is stunning. I think his characters are always well done. I loved the main character of Elsa, but I just don't think I enjoyed this to the extent that I could have if I had been in the right mood for it, and if I'd physically read it. I definitely think I need to give this a reread and give it a fairer rating after I physically reread it, because right now I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was very cute. I thought the characters were great, but through a lot of this book, my mind wandered, and there were a couple parts that were just pretty boring to read through. So I want to give it another shot though, because I do love Fredrick Backman's writing a lot. And 3.5 stars isn't a bad rating by any means. Like, I definitely still recommend this book, but it's not my favorite. It's my least favorite so far of his books. If you want my favorite, that's Beartown. So go read Beartown by Fredrick Backman before you do anything else. Those are the 5 most recent books I've read. Have you read any of these? Definitely let me know what you think of them if you have down below. I love chatting with you guys about books in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And until next time,